Welcome to today's Tech
Probably.
Tuesday. My name's Jeff Gorell, and today we have, for the first time, some live guests on our little panel here. With me today, virtually and appropriately distanced, is Brandon Samuel from Convergent Technologies. He's our sales manager. Matthew Jameson, one of our senior engineers, as well as from Cohesity, to talk about their amazing product, we have Tim Sherman and Greg Sechrist.
Good morning, Jeff.
Good morning. Our time is a little tight, so I'm going to shut up and pass the ball on over to Brandon.
Hey, good morning, everyone. First and foremost, thank you to the folks from Cohesity for joining. Kind of wanted to kick it all off by saying how excited we are to have Cohesity and our partner family at Convergent. For about the past 2 years now, we've been a Cohesity partner, and the amount of opportunities that we've been able to create and the amount of wins that we've had with Cohesity have been pretty staggering, considering all the other partners that we work with. And it's a product that we're really excited about, and we found that our customers are really excited about it as well. So certainly are looking forward to this conversation, and kind of want to start it all off by giving either you, Tim, or Greg the opportunity to kind of tell us a little bit about Cohesity, how Cohesity got started, and a little bit about the company, from a high level. So I'll turn it over to one of you, and we can kind of start the conversation that way.
Sure. Thanks, Brandon. This is interesting. Can y'all hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The story here on the founding of this company is actually one of the points that brought me over and Greg over as well to Cohesity. The gentleman who founded Cohesity, his name is Mohit Aaron. He's a big name out in the Silicon Valley and is becoming more well-known globally, as he's been a part of major things for probably 3 different instances. He started at Google, was the lead developer on the Google Cloud platform, on Google File, and then started and co-founded Nutanix with 2 other partners recently before moving on and developing Cohesity. So a lot of experience there from a hyperconverged perspective, and intelligence and knowledge and experience that's been brought to the table with Cohesity that we can get into in a little bit more. But obviously the background with Mohit is great, and it's a big part of the story that we tell our customers out there to get them interested and show them the value of Cohesity.
And as far as we're concerned, Cohesity kind of came on like gangbusters for Convergent. We very early in the relationship were able to close some pretty significant business with you all. And every time we speak, you guys seem to be very busy. And I'd love to hear more about, why you think Cohesity has been able to grow so quickly in the marketplace over the past couple of years.
Yeah. Do you want me to take that one, Tim?
Sure. Go ahead, Greg.
Yeah. So like Tim was saying, Mohit has a background in building a web scale file system, and then co-founding Nutanix. One of the leaders in hyperconverged, really kind of defining that hyperconverged technology, that platform, and that whole concept. So, and if you talk to Mohit on his vision with Cohesity, he's addressing an area that we haven't had innovation in really a long time. There's been plenty on the primary side. So, with hyperconvergence, and you have products like SimpliVity with HPE, VxRail, HyperFlex. But on the biggest data consumer in the data center, which is the secondary copies. So think, what's the biggest consumer of data in a data center? It's really the backup environment, because you have copies and copies and copies of your primary, and then you throw NAS, like secondary file and object. So when I talk NAS, other than running your data stores off of your NAS environment where you have to have high performance, the rest of the NAS is traditionally used for file and object. So if you think about, 80% of the data in the data center that you have to manage is that, backups and the unstructured. That has been really a pain point for customers. And again, no innovation. So Cohesity is really about wrapping your hands around that. And we've coined the term mass data fragmentation. And that's exactly what it is. You have copies of data all over the place in different locations, you know, for data redundancy, data availability, but getting your hands around that and managing it and using it is the challenge. So that's where Cohesity came in. And we actually started shipping product in 2015. And it's been such a radical shift in helping customers get their hands around and manage that data and turn it from, you know, inefficient, fragmented data into something that you can use to maintain your copy data management and also use the data copies for so much more than just an insurance policy. So it's a modern platform to allow customers to consolidate their data. One of the big components of that is the backup copies and generating those, and then gaining more insight and intelligence out of that data. And oh, by the way, it's designed as a native cloud integration platform, being modern.
So that actually,
and Brandon,
go ahead, Tim.
Brandon, to your question about why it's caught on with customers is we typically find that in any individual customer, 20% of their data would be labeled primary. That's mission critical, high SLA. And then they've got 80% of data, which is copies, cloud copies, test dev, et cetera, that's out there. They don't know how to manage it. It's in different silos, and it's just a sprawl in their data center. Well, Cohesity comes in, and Mohit's vision addresses all of that 80%. You might have seen in some of our presentations, it's the tip of the iceberg, whereas the ice showing above the water is the primary, and that big section of ice underneath is everything else, and that's what we address. So it's very hard for us to go to a customer and not find a use case that we can help them with.
Sure, makes complete sense. And Greg, kind of building off of your last comment, I can't tell you the last time I had a meeting with a customer, new or existing, where the term, you know, cloud didn't come up at some point.
Right.
And I'd like, it's a great way to lead into kind of what your cloud integration looks like from a Cohesity perspective, because I can think of at least a couple of you know, wins that we've had with you all where the cloud integration was the piece that put us over the top, especially against some of the competition out there that don't necessarily have the capabilities. So right. Just a good time to talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, it's a great lead in, because, you know, like I was saying, Cohesity is a modern platform, and when I say modern, it's truly software defined. So, you know, compare that to the way that we've done it for years, to where you have pieces, parts in a stack. So let's say take backup, for example. You had your backup server, then you had target devices, and then you had components in between to be able to push that data to the backup target. And then if you want to extend it to the cloud, you basically have to take all those individual components and put them in the cloud, and then use some type of gateway to connect it. So Cohesity is really built on it's true modern web scale software defined. What does that mean? It means all the services that, you know, all the individual components that we used to deal with in a stack, it is now consolidated. And the big piece of that is it's a 100% REST API platform. So as you know, with cloud integration, to make that truly cloud enabled, that's where you really leverage APIs. So, you know, our ability to do, you know, on-prem running Cohesity on hyperconverged nodes, you're getting the exact same software stack if you want to run that natively in the cloud. You're not putting together different VMs and pieces and parts in the cloud in order to represent, you know, to give you all that functionality. It's built into that same software defined stack. So that gives us the ability to run Cohesity, like I said, on-prem, on hyperconverged nodes, so you can scale non-disruptively. You can also run it in the cloud and scale non-disruptively in the cloud. And because we're API driven, we can easily connect between Cohesity instances and manage from one pane of glass. So it really empowers customers to start using Cohesity in a traditional sense of on-prem, but also the glue and the capability to move that workload to the cloud and eventually run it natively or hybrid.
Very cool. My next question is actually for Jeff and Matt. Those of you that know Convergent know that any technology that we move to market with and we put a lot behind, not only are we going to know it inside and out from a sales perspective, but we also like to know it inside and out from a technical perspective. So I'd like to hear from you guys kind of, since we brought on Cohesity, just kind of how easy has it been to learn, and I know we're now starting to do some of our own implementations, and just kind of an overall feeling of the product from your perspective, and learning about it and learning how to use it and that sort of thing.
Well, I'll say that it's probably about 10 to 15 minutes of the management UI to kind of pick up on the flow, and then everything else is simple and easy as far as a end user, data manager or server manager or backup guy, whatever. I mean, once you pick up a couple of the ways that they've laid out the UI, it makes total sense. You can do every function within the UI. You just know the very simple order 1, 2, 3, 4, and where do I want to store it, or where do I want to replicate it, or where do I want to. It's as simple as it gets. Having come from a few decades of messing around with everything from Sun and Legato and Commvault and this. I wish I had this when I was a younger man. I'd probably have more hair up here and less grays. And Matt's just recently done a deployment, his first solo run, and I'll let him talk about how wonderful that was. Although I think I just gave away the punchline there. So
a bit. Yeah, as far as deployment goes, this is definitely one of the easier products I've ever worked with. They lay out the requirements up front, and the actual cluster deployment itself is a few minutes worth of work. I think total for the cluster build was maybe 12 minutes. I didn't time it precisely, but the cluster was, once the network requirements are met, the cluster comes along fairly simply. As far as the management, again, I have to echo what Jeff said. It's very intuitive, very straightforward. The layout, again, I don't know if we could call it a Gen 5 layout at this point, but it's intuitive. Customer spends a little bit of time and it's easy to figure out. The biggest catch I see in this is because of its capabilities, such as the NFS file system and a backup client. Trying to get the customer to figure out how they're going to use it and how they're going to provision it.
Yeah.
You really want to spend some more time talking with the customer about what their end goals are, so they don't go all bore and provision everything for backup and then realize they need an NFS system later. So that's the only drawback I see, and that's, again, just planning, not the product. So it's definitely an education and definitely a great product to work with.
What you're saying, Matt, is it's too capable.
Yes. I mean, the fact that a customer is faced with, I can use it as an NFS data store, I can use it in an NFS file system, and a backup target, not a backup target, an actual backup system. That really boggles the mind for some of the on-site admins. I can do all of this with one box. Now, how am I going to use it? I think they all fall in the same trap, that they have one primary goal out of the gate and then realize the other capabilities and have to backtrack at that point. So if I had to stress anything, it's stress the capabilities, stress everything you want to do with it, and maybe reserve a little bit for future deployment or future planning.
Yeah, that's really, really good insight and feedback from your experience as you're helping customers adopt Cohesity. I like to use the flexibility is probably the #1 driver for Cohesity, and the reason that we can be flexible to be, if you want to use us as a platform for all of your secondary data, file, and object, you can do that. If you want to use the system for just backup recovery to take over that data protection role, you can use it as that, or you can do both. And the reason that it's so flexible is really at our core architecture. That's the major difference between Cohesity and some of the other, vendors that claim to be modern out there. Is going back to Mohit's DNA, he actually built from the ground up the web scale file system that's at the heart of our platform, SpanFS. So if you think about our architecture is built on a web scale file system versus some competitors that got to the market a bit earlier, but they built it on open source NoSQL databases. So if you think about that as a foundation for how your architecture can be flexible and can grow, it's a major difference. And that's why we get, if you look at our footprint compared to others, that's how we can really collapse rack units of traditional legacy gear down into a really small footprint. And also, by the way, just like you said, make it easy to manage, because we also have a modern user interface, and because we're software defined, you're really dealing with that modern software stack. So that gives us the ability to really blend everything together. And you mentioned deployment and how easy it is to stand up. Yeah, when the only requirement today, especially in our times that we're living in, is to get the hyperconverged nodes on the network. That's what Cohesity runs across, all those nodes in a clustered fashion. Once you get them on the network, you can do everything else remotely. That's integrating with your sources that you want to protect in the backup environment. It is integrating with your NAS. So if you want to do NAS backup, and once we have that NAS backup on us, we can then take that and convert it into a NAS target on Cohesity. Now you've just migrated your data. So really, I love this, the simplicity and the flexibility. We make hard things possible with Cohesity.
So speaking of the architecture, and I know we're going to be short on time here. It's object-oriented underlying birthplace, I guess, with the SpanFS, is effectively ransomware proof, or at least your backups are ransomware proof. Anything exposed probably wouldn't be at the next layer up in presentation, but underneath it all, you're safe. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And it goes to the architecture matters. Mm-hmm. And so being modern, and to compare and contrast quickly. So legacy backup systems, like we talked about, you had the backup application and they pushed the images, the actual backup copies, to some type of storage device. And those, when they hit the storage device, there's sometimes a mount point, sometimes it's proprietary, but still you can get to that storage and the backup copies. And if you compromise those credentials, that's where you encrypt, you get hacked, and now you don't have a backup copy to recover from. With Cohesity, since we're 100% REST API driven, when we actually generate backup copies from the source, we write it into our SpanFS file system on the back end. We take that backup copy and then it becomes read only at that point. The only way to ever get to that backup copy once it's on us is to expose it through the REST API. And if you front end that with multi-factor authentication, now you have total access control on who can even get to the workflow to expose the backup copy. Unlike it's just sitting out there on a target device. So if you compromise the storage, you get to it. That's how we protect the data itself, the backup copies. We also have with our system a second prong of defense, which is, we use artificial intelligence. We're looking at the patterns that the system, when they create backup copies, what does a normal backup look like? So if you have a 2% change rate on a daily basis for 2 months, and all of a sudden you have 100 VMs with 100% change rate, because we're capturing the incrementals,
that's a bad sign.
And so we have some built-in reporting to let customers know that something is going on. So it's a multi-pronged defense from cybersecurity perspective.
Nice.
Very cool. So since we're running up on time, I'll use this kind of as the last talking point. One of the things I've loved about Cohesity as a sales rep is it seems to fit into a lot of different customers from a lot of different verticals and their needs. We've sold it from manufacturing to financial to healthcare and everything in between. Is it truly a product for anyone? Have you guys seen any sort of verticals where it makes a lot of sense and you've gained a lot of traction, or is like I said, is it good for everyone?
So that's a great question. And part of our focus is, again, back to Mohit's vision. It's an enterprise class platform, but that doesn't mean we don't go from top to bottom. We run into a lot of competitors that have a very cost-effective entry point, but as they scale and grow with the customers, they run into problems and hurdles. Mohit architected this platform so that we can start as high or as low as we need to and still address the customer's needs. There's obviously going to be points where we don't fit, but we've had success selling in small commercial class customers all the way up to the high finance, pharmaceutical, healthcare type customers that are out there. So I'm yet to see, and Greg, you can chime in if you have, but there's not a place where we wouldn't be a fit. We can work and be creative to help get our platform onto pretty much any customer's data center.
Right. Yeah. And so just, when you talk about the size of customers that when they're looking at us as a solution, again, going back to our architecture, we can run virtually. So as a small virtual edition. So if you want to start off, again, same software defined stack. And we could then, if you wanted to go to a larger deployment, we run on hyper-converged. The key is you can start small and then non-disruptive scalability from that point on. So it makes it very, very simple. It's been interesting. We've had, I think our biggest interest and our biggest traction here in Virginia have been education and government. And I think what's resonating with them, and when they look at what they're doing today and what Cohesity brings to the table, the number one talking point and pain point they're trying to solve is that cyber threat. Mm-hmm. Protecting their backup copies and their file and object data from cyber attacks, ransomware, because that seems to be like the number one attack vector. So I think that's one of the reasons we've gotten traction, in addition to really bringing efficiency into an environment, because I talked about how we can reduce rack units and all that legacy footprint down into true efficient hyper-converged software-defined platform.
Very cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that just about wraps it up. Guys, Greg, Tim, we certainly appreciate you guys hopping on. It's been extremely informative, and we're very happy with the relationship, and we've loved working with you guys and look forward to continuing to do so. If you have seen anything on this Beverage and Bites podcast that you'd like more information about, you can reach out to us at sales@ctgva.com or give us a call at 804-353-5307. We're happy to answer any questions that you have, and hopefully in the not too distant future, we can all come out and see you at your office and have a conversation that's not over the internet.
Yeah.
But again, thanks guys. Thanks Jeff and Matt for hopping on as well. Everyone have a great weekend, and we'll look forward to seeing you soon.